Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Okay, yeah, so we will start soon. Okay, just a few minutes. Let's get everyone in here. All right, everyone, I think we'll start now, okay? First of all, thank you everyone for coming to this event. It's been a while, it's been in the works. We originally proposed this for last spring, but we were happy to have it now. I wanna thank all our panelists for coming. We're so excited to have you. And so this event's called Pathways to Law School. And we're going to be talking about, we're gonna have our panelists speak about their experience before law school, in between college and law school, why they chose law, their time during law school, and what they hope to do afterwards. And so we have some student leaders from Columbia Law School, from some of the clubs and law reviews, and we're really, really excited to get this started. So why don't we start out with introductions. So I guess we'll do introductions for our board members who are here of CPU and our panelists, of course. So we'll start with our panelists. I guess first, can we have Tumise, or do you prefer Olu?
Yeah, no, Tumise is good.
Okay, sure.
Thanks for inviting me. Very excited to speak with you all. My name is Tumise Asebiomo. I am the current editor-in-chief of the Columbia Law Review. I'm in my third year at the law school. And prior to Columbia, I completed my undergraduate degree at Princeton University, where I studied politics and concentrated in Near Eastern studies and French language and culture. After graduation, I'll be at a New York City law firm.
Great, great. Thank you for coming. And next we have Damonta Morgan.
Hey y'all, my name is Damonta Morgan. I am a 2L at Columbia Law School. I am here because I'm president of American Constitution Society, apparently. I am originally from Clarksdale, Mississippi, which is a small town in the northwest region of the state. I went to Vanderbilt for undergrad, where I majored in political science and United States history. And I spent a couple of years after undergrad, which I think we'll talk about more later, working for the New York City Department of Education, doing data and research analysis. And I was also a graduate student at Teachers College, doing education policy at that time as well. Glad to be here and can't wait to answer questions for you guys.
Great, great. Thank you, Damonta. And next we have Michael Brunetti.
Hi everyone, I'm Michael Brunetti. I'm a 2L. I'm also the co-president of the Columbia Business and Law Association up at the law school. I'm from Long Island, New York originally, but I spent my undergrad years at Duke University in North Carolina, studied history there, and then I went straight through to law school. So if any of you are considering that path, I'm happy to chat about it.
Great, great. And Moliang Jiang. That's right.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Moliang. I'm from Beijing, China. I'm a second-year law student at Columbia Law School, and on the poster it says I'm the editor of Columbia Business Law Review, and also I'm a board member of Columbia Business and Law Association. So I went to undergrad in Carleton College. It's a liberal arts college in Minnesota, and I graduated in 2018. Took a year off between law school and undergrad, just worked for a year and applied for law school, took the LSAT. So if any one of you are also thinking about taking a gap year between undergrad and law school, I'm glad to chat about it.
Thank you. Awesome. That's great. So that's introductions. Well, I would just briefly will introduce our board members who are here. My name is John George. I'm the president of the Columbia Political Union. To everyone that's attending here, CPU is the umbrella multi-partisan political organization at Columbia. We put on a lot of political events, speakers, debates, panels like this one. We know pre-law is very popular, so that's why we decided to do this. And we're always looking for new members, so if you go on our website, check it out. We have meetings every Monday. And Chase.
Yeah, hey, I'm Chase. I'm the events director for CPU. I'm also a sophomore in Columbia College studying classics. And yeah, I'm just excited to get this started.
And Annie's here as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Annie. I'm operations director at CPU, and I'm a rising sophomore at Columbia College studying political science, but I'm taking a gap semester, so I'll see you all later.
And Karina.
Hey everyone, I'm Karina. I'm a sophomore in CC studying political science and statistics, and I am the marketing director for CPU.
Great, and we have Danielle.
Hi everyone, I'm a senior in Columbia College studying English, and I am the director of voting engagement.
And let's see, I think we have Gabby here as well. Gabby, I don't know if.
Hi, I'm Gabby. I'm a sophomore at Barnard. I'm studying statistics, and I'm the vice president of CPU.
Well, thank you, everyone. So that's us, and let's go with our first. Our first question is very, very open-ended. Why did you choose law school? So I suppose we'll go in order of who did our introductions. So Tumise.
I was hoping to avoid being the first person to answer this question, but here we are. For me, attending law school was part of a broader interest in obtaining a graduate degree. I felt that by the time I came to my end of college, I had just started to learn, and so it was very important to me to think about what continuing my education looked like in general. So at the time I was applying to law school, I was also considering some other graduate programs. I think we're going to get to this later, but I took time off beforehand and I worked, and I think what ultimately kind of led me to choose law school was just a greater interest in how society organizes itself, right? And you know, whether that's from a very like theoretical, what is a democratic society, what is the legal system, and how does that create the end result? That being part of it, but a different part of it being that we experience the world very much as consumers and as, you know, political individuals. And so I was really curious about how the law and the legal systems actually operate and create this entire world within which we live and function. In ways that may be obvious to us, but also in ways that may be unbeknownst. So very much for the intellectual curiosity.
Damonta.
Yeah, so I've wanted to go to law school since I was like 12, and that really stemmed from through an unfortunate series of events. I got to sit in on a criminal trial when I was 12. I was not the defendant, by the way, you guys can breathe. And I saw the judge like ruling, basically telling people to talk or not to talk. And I was like, that's what I want to do. And so through some sequence of that and watching Law and Order for my formative years, I knew that I wanted to go to law school. I'd also conceived of a career in politics at a young age because it just seemed attainable, and I was like, that's something that I would like to do. And so in determining how to get there, I just researched a lot of people who had held the positions I would be interested in, and many of them were lawyers. And so I figured that it was something that I wanted to do. So it was pretty simple for me.
Great, thank you, Damonta. And Michael.
Mm-hmm. So my parents are actually both lawyers. They're not big law lawyers, like they do criminal defense work in, out on Long Island. So I kind of grew up in that environment, sort of seeing what lawyers do, what kind of skills it takes to be a good lawyer, all that. I'm not as interested in criminal defense work, which I guess we'll get to a little bit later, like career interest, but I found like the overall legal environment of things to be really interesting. I feel like it's a very distinguished, noble profession. You really leverage your critical thinking skills. There's a lot going on, a lot of problem solving, and it's a pretty flexible career too. I mean, you can practice pretty much in any city. You can do all these different practice areas. It's a very dynamic career. So it's something that really attracted me. So yeah.
Sorry, and Moliang.
Yeah, so I was a political science major in undergrad as well, and I'm very much like a plan-driven person. So back in sophomore year, when I was thinking about what I should do after graduation, I figured that not knowing what I could do was a political science major, really. And so I was looking into different options for graduate school, and did an externship at a law firm during a break in sophomore year, and talked with a bunch of lawyers during that externship. And it was a really good experience. And even though I didn't know exactly what type of law I want to do in the future, and like not knowing what exactly the law is, but the lawyers all gave me a sense that going to law school itself is a good investment. You get a good degree. It opens up a lot of doors for you, whether you want to go into the public sector, the private sector, or you don't want to do any legal work in the future. Maybe you want to transition into a totally business role some years out of law school. It's still a good degree to have. So I thought maybe why not just, I think it's a good investment. And so I decided to apply.
Sounds great. Thank you all for that. And then I suppose some of you guys touched on pieces of this, but the next thing we wanted to move on to was, and we had a lot of questions, so I'm going to condense a little bit. What was your undergraduate major? What were you involved in college academically or extracurricularly? And how did those experiences affect your decision? Did they motivate, change your decision? Have they affected what type of law you want to study? Anything like that. And also for all of our questions, if any of our panelists want to go off of each other or add on to what someone else said, feel free to do so. And I guess we can, maybe we want to change up the order. Do we want to start with Damonta this time?
When you said change up the order, I was really hoping you would go with Moliang. But this is fine. This is fine. One of my virtual backgrounds is, I don't know what kind of animal it is, but sitting in the fire, just saying like, this is fine. So again, I majored in political science and United States history at Vanderbilt, mostly because I knew that I wanted to go to law school, and also because I'm way more interested in the humanities than I am in maths or sciences. And so it just felt more comfortable for me. When I was involved in mock trial. I did that for 3 years, 2 or 3 years. 1 year we went to nationals, which is not important, but it's a great thing to to harp on. I was also Speaker of the Senate at Vanderbilt, and so both of those things were more aligned with my near and long-term interest. Tennessee has like a mock legislature and a mock courts and a mock like governor based on the public and private colleges. And so I applied to be a Supreme Court, a Tennessee intercollegiate Supreme Court justice when I was a sophomore in college. And I got that, and I did that for my junior year, which was really fun because I had no experience doing that kind of law. Like I did mock trial, but I had no experience with appellate law. And so that was a good introduction to moot court, which you have to do the first year of law school as well. And so it got me way more excited for moot court when I got to law school, and I felt more prepared having done that. I also did some non-career oriented things. So I was in an a cappella group, which was a lot of fun. I was a tour guide, an orientation leader, the general things that over-involved people do. I'm trying to see if I'm missing a question. Did I answer everything, Jen?
Yes, yes, definitely. Yeah, just general undergraduate experience, I guess. And if you want to add anything at any time, feel free.
Okay.
And I guess what we'll do is we'll stagger the order. So I guess next would be Michael.
Sure. So like I was mentioning, I went to undergrad at Duke. So spent 4 years there, studied history. I really liked history, and I knew I could probably do pretty well in it. I wanted to go to law school from long before I went to Duke. So that was something important for me when I was picking my major, something that I enjoyed, something that wouldn't tank my GPA. Like my mom was like, oh, you need to take like econ. Like it's really good. It'll help you like get a good job. And I'm like, Ma, everyone I spoke to said like law schools don't care if you majored in like, you know, this really hard quantitative subject, or if you majored in, you know, political science, history, whatever. It doesn't really make a huge difference. So I'm like, pick something I'll like, pick something I'll do well, and pick something that hopefully will help develop some of my like writing skills, reading skills. So went with history, really enjoyed it. I thought that was a good decision, even now in hindsight. Outside of you know, classes though, I've had the typical thing where I definitely overcommitted. So I'm just going to share a few of the organizations that were important to me. So student government, I was on the student government judiciary at Duke. That was a good experience. Moot court was one that, you know, I enjoyed. It's actually not that different at the college level than like moot court at the law school level. Obviously the law school one, you know, there's more to it. It's more complicated, but same concepts are there. That's where I learned that, you know, litigation was pretty interesting, but not something that I was really looking to do as a career. So I actually was able to figure that out pretty early, thankfully, through moot court. And then the Duke Student Alumni Board I was also on, so liked to reach out to alumni, things like that. So stayed involved, did a bunch of different things. I don't think I did any of those organizations for the purpose of like helping with law school admissions. I did them because I wanted to do the experiences. I wanted to get involved with those clubs or organizations. And I would recommend, if any of you are, you know, considering kind of what you want to do with your extracurriculars at the college level, I don't think it's worth like sticking with something or joining an organization just for the purpose of like looking good for your resume for law school admissions. I don't think it's that helpful. Like I don't think Harvard or Columbia or any of those other schools are going to be like, oh, this person was like, you know, in moot court for 3 years, like let him in. Or like, oh, this person was only in 3 clubs instead of 5 clubs. Like, no, we don't want someone like that. We don't need a slacker.
See, yeah, that's great advice. Thank you, Michael. And Moliang?
Yeah. Yeah, like I mentioned, I was a political science major as well at Carleton, and I did a minor in French and Francophone studies. I really echo what Michael just said, that you should just pursue whatever your interests are and join whatever clubs you want to join. Maybe people would think that like moot court is like a resume booster. Like if you put it on your resume, it shows that you are interested in law, and the law school admission will find a connection between your extracurricular activities and the club. But you'll never know. Actually, I was talking with a career counselor at Columbia Law a couple of weeks ago, and he suggested me to put my undergrad activities, so my resume was getting a little bit longer, and I was thinking about cutting out an activity I did in college, but he was suggesting me to still put it in the resume. And it was concert manager of the music department. So you wouldn't think that doing like concert managing at the music department is any way related to law at all. but he just explained why like a partner at a law firm would find managing concerts similar to a transactional deal you would do at a big law firm, because it involves a lot of organizing. You have to think through the logistics. You have to do the planning. So the roles can have some overlap, even though like at an earlier stage when we were in undergrad, we probably wouldn't think that music is, you know, kind of related to law. So that's just something I learned just 1 month ago. Yeah, and I didn't do any, I wouldn't say any extracurricular activities helped me make my decision to go to law school. But definitely the internships that I did were really affecting like my decision on deciding which graduate school I want to attend. So I did an internship at the Senate with Senator Amy Klobuchar, and you know, at the Senate there are the Judiciary Committee, so I had the opportunity to talk with lawyers, and I also did a think tank internship in Washington D.C. At the Wilson Center, and there was also a bunch of lawyers there. So those internship opportunities definitely helped me to make my decision to go to law school.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. And so the next thing we're going to do is move on is so the academic experience between law school and college. What would you say are some of the biggest differences between what's law school and undergrad? What are the biggest differences between classes, the extracurricular experience as well? What was the biggest shocker? And I guess we can start with Michael this time.
Wait, John, I think, did we get to Tumise?
Oh, no, we didn't. Oh, sorry, because I changed
Fine.
the order.
Oh no, we could keep it interesting too, just so it's not just us talking one after the other. But I'm happy to start on this question.
Yes, of course.
So I think I would say 2 big points about law school versus college. The first is your extracurriculars really don't matter nearly as much, nor do I think they're as central to the experience, specifically when you're a first-year student. I think it was really interesting to come in and you're just really here for school. You know, a lot of people are members of affinity groups or interest organizations or different like volunteer and pro bono opportunities. And I found that people pursue those out of actual true interest, and not necessarily in an instrumental way. So your first year of law school, it's like everyone does moot court. You may do like a specialized one at Columbia, which means you're competing externally. Like I was on the European law moot court and we competed in Florence. But it's, you know, beyond that, beyond like a moot court experience, your extracurriculars are just a lot more about the communities you're interested in or the areas of law that you're interested in, et cetera. When you're a second and third year student, you obviously have the opportunity to join a journal, and you know, my experience on the Law Review has become very central to my experience at the law school. But that being said, I wouldn't consider it as much an extracurricular because it's still a very kind of academic exercise. And, you know, we could talk about that separately. So extracurriculars, I think just like the relevance and the engagement looks really different and is not kind of pointed or like lining yourself up in a particular way, especially since law school's 3 years. And, you know, by the time you're a third year student, you're not really engaging with groups as much. The other difference academically was just like the one assessment, which I'm sure many of you have heard about. At the end of your first year courses, you have one exam and that's like your one grade. But beyond that, I found, you know, comparing to Princeton and perhaps the Columbia experience is pretty close to this, just the level of reading and engagement and class prep work was very similar to what I had experienced in undergrad. The difference was like, you know, I'm actually fully doing my schoolwork in a way that, you know, in college I was doing maybe like 30 to 50% of my schoolwork at any given time because you're like so engaged with like your sorority, like this club, that club, mock trial, debate, like, you know, fashion shows, whatever it is. I just found that people are a lot more centered on the academic experience itself.
Great, I see. And then we can go to Damonta.
Yeah, I would largely agree with what Tumise has shared. I will say, in addition, that there are some ways to signal your interest in law school. So though there's not much pressure on clubs, some organizations like the American Constitution Society, like the Federalist Society, I think put you, and like Columbia Law Review, which isn't as easy to get into as the American Constitution Society and the Federalist Society, I think set you up in the longer term for, I guess everybody here is interested in politics and policy. And so it's a way of signaling to people after you graduate what your interests are. And for those who might be interested in clerkships and judicial clerkships after that process, it's a way of networking to get in line for that as well. So I think that's the only thing that I would add. My undergrad experience lies, I'm about to add more. My undergrad experience wasn't, I didn't study very much in undergrad because I didn't feel like I needed to. Not to say that Vanderbilt isn't rigorous, I just strategically chose my courses. And I found that I couldn't do that first year at law school. But also I realized early on that I had to set more boundaries, right? Because I did not want to be studying at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. Like my bedtime is midnight. And if I don't finish it at midnight, like it will be okay tomorrow. And so I would say that was one of the main differences as well.
Great, great. And Michael.
Yeah, so I'll first speak a little bit about the extracurriculars. I agree with what Damonta said in that, you don't really need extracurriculars to, get a job, but they can be very helpful in indicating interest if you're looking for a very particular job or a very particular region. So if like you're interested in, you go to Columbia Law School and you want to practice in Boston, right? Be a really good idea to join the New England Law Society at Columbia. Like that indicates some interest, especially if you're not from Boston. Like a firm may look at you and be like, I don't know, why do you want to come here? Like, why should we give you an offer? How do we know you're going to take it? But if you're like, oh, well, actually, I've been very involved with like this organization that particularly is geared towards that region, you can like show some interest that way. So that's helpful. They're not required, definitely not. I will say I've actually found the extracurriculars in law school to be a lot better than the ones at undergrad in so many different ways. I mean, so one of the other organizations I was involved with at Duke was the History Union down there. And like on a really good day, like we had a great event, we'd have like 40 people come out of a university with like what, 8,000 undergrads, right? Like 40 people, like not bad, not amazing. Now like Columbia Business and Law Association and other events, like we'll have like 100 people at an event in a school which is significantly smaller, like, significantly fewer people. So like, I think there is a lot more engagement, at least from the 1Ls and 2Ls in a lot of these organizations. Like there's a lot of interest, people go to them and they don't go to them for the purpose of like building their resume, like maybe a high school club would. Like they go there because they genuinely want to learn more. Like they realize this is their career, it's a professional school, and they want to make an informed decision on where to practice, what areas to practice in, all of that. As for the academics, I will also echo Damonta, whoop, not to knock Duke or the history major, but I too would, selectively take certain courses. And, there was a lot of writing involved, a lot of reading, but nothing compared to law school, at least at Columbia. Nothing compared. I mean, it's a huge adjustment. I mean, I'm not up to like 5 a.m., 4 a.m., like doing reading and studying or anything like that. But like there have been some relatively late nights, especially compared to what I would be doing, in undergrad. So if you're going to law school, you should be definitely ready for that, I'd say that rise, unless you are spending like tons and tons of hours doing work in undergrad. Hopefully not too many of you are, but I'm sure some of you, especially the STEM people, are. So I'd be ready for that adjustment, especially if you also, selectively take classes. And particularly that first year when you can't selectively target, the easy courses and you need to put the work in because there is just so much material. So big adjustment for me, at least.
Great, great. That's good to hear. And Moliang?
Yeah, I echo what everyone just said. For extracurricular, I guess the only thing I would add is if you join an affinity group, then there might be opportunities to connect with people in your affinity group, including alumni. So that would be a good way to build networks earlier on in law school, even like since your first year in law school. And it will be helping you to network with people before finding a job. And so you will know people from law firms or other NGOs that you might want to work for after law school, and that will help you find a job. Yeah, and I will echo that academic experience are really different between law school and undergrad. So for a political science major at a liberal arts college, you know, lots of classes I did, the assessment were like papers and class participations or group projects. So you don't really have to pay attention like 100% in every class. Like the professor might be saying something, but you just, maybe you don't have to take the notes of it because you only have to do your own research after the class and finish a final paper. You don't have to remember every point another classmate said in class when they were doing like a class discussion because it might just not be important. But in law school, like for every class, I think you have to pay like at least 80 to 90% of attention on what is going on in class. And if you just happen to be not paying attention, I will just go back to listen to the recordings because everything going on in class is so important for the final exam that you want to know to get a good grade. And definitely is not like the workload is so much greater in law school compared to undergrad. I'm not staying up late either for law school. I go to bed regularly before midnight as well, but it's just more like you have to be more strategic and efficient in the way you study. Yeah, and be really strategic about the way you take the exams because, you know, the curve system, I'm sure many of you have known, at law schools are harsh because you are not being judged by how much you know about an area of law, but how much you know compared to other people in your class. So the more you know, the better you know, and the better you write, the better grade you get, and that helps you get a better job. So I guess that's a reality.
I'll just jump in with a super quick note too. A lot of what we're saying is oriented toward the first year of law school. Academically speaking, as a second or third year student, you can get your course credits from externing, whether it's like working with judges or in-house or with public defender offices, whatever it is. You could work in a clinic, which is basically our own kind of student-run, lawyer-supervised, like legal services that we provide. So I'm in the mediation clinic. We actually mediate with clients in New York City courts as well as for the EEOC, right? We have clinics across different practice areas such as immigration law, asylum law. There's like an entrepreneurship clinic. There was a mass incarceration clinic. You can do research for professors. You can TA courses, you can do your own research. There's so many other ways that you can actually learn, but those are kind of offered to you as a second and third year student. You kind of build your own experience, which is also very different from undergrad.
That's great. Thank you all for all that. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to move the next section to another board member. So Annie's going to take the next section.
So this is a question that has been on my mind personally because I'm in the process of taking a gap semester. But for those of you that did take time off between college and law school, why did you choose to, take that path? And what was that experience like? And do you recommend, taking time off in between those two? So I guess we can start off with, I don't exactly remember who did take time off. Okay, so we can start with Damonta.
Sure. So, and I think Tumise and Moliang took time off as well. I took time off because I just wasn't ready for law school. Like I had attended panels like this where people gave me the expectations or told me the expectations. And I was like, nope, I won't do that. And so while I knew like longer term that I wanted to go, I didn't think that I was ready to go right after because of a lack of discipline, just like a lot of factors, a lot of personal factors. And so I found that 2 years to be very instructive in developing just like a work habit So I worked full time at the Department of Education, as I mentioned. And when I came to law school, it was much easier to just go back into that habit, like a 9 to 6, treating my classes and studying during the day as a work day instead of partying during the day or studying at night or vice versa. And so it was really good for me to take that time to figure out like what it would be like to be an adult. I find that generally people who took time off have an easier time in law school, which is not to say that people who don't fail. Michael is a great example. Michael did very well the first year, and he did not take time off. And so I think it's a very personal like calculus that you have to make. Do you think you are ready to take that next step?
And then I think we can go to Moliang.
Yeah, I took 1 year off between college and law school, and that was also partially due to I was not entirely prepared for law school, since I didn't take the LSAT before the application cycle of my senior year, so I couldn't apply. So I decided to take the LSAT later. And also it was a strategic decision because I decided earlier on that I wanted to take a gap year. So I didn't take the LSAT and didn't prepare like my junior year. And I made that decision because I did the externship in law firm back in sophomore year, and I talked with lawyers about like, did you take a gap year? Do you recommend it? And some people didn't, and some people did. And the overall impression I got was, it's okay if you go straight through from college to a law school, it's totally fine. But it might be even better if you take a gap year, especially if you are not entirely ready for law school, or you just want to explore different interests, career interests or other interests. So that's why I made this decision. So after graduating from college, I went back to China. I studied for the LSAT basically for the summer, took it in October. So I was really just on my pace. I wasn't like trying to find a new job and just trying to like fill the gap in my resume. I was just taking my time and studying for the LSAT, writing my applications, and submitted them in November. And then I started to find a job. I found an internship in Shanghai, doing a brand marketing internship at a Fortune 500 company. And I stayed there for about 4 to 5 months. And then I decided to pursue a different path. So I went back to Beijing, where I'm from, and I did a venture capital firm internship in Beijing because I was really interested in exploring artificial intelligence and just technology in general. So I specifically applied for their investment internship in the tech area. And I thought that was really helpful because I was considering doing corporate law after law school, and having the opportunity to work at a VC was just helped me to have some knowledge of what's going on, and help me have some talking points if I network with lawyers and telling them that I have an interest in business law and corporate law. I know what I'm talking about when I was a first-year law student. Okay, so do I recommend taking some time off in between? I would say I definitely would. But if you are really sure that you want to go to law school right now and you have everything you need, like LSAT, a good resume and all that, sure, you can apply. But taking some time off can give you a better sense of what you want to do in the future, build your resume. And that's my speculation, but I think law schools might be more willing to give some scholarship if you had a year off or 2 years off, because you might be, I don't know, because I thought maybe I wouldn't have got my like scholarship if I went straight through from college to law school. That's what I was thinking. But if you take at least a year off, law school might thought you are a more interesting candidate and give you some scholarship. But I'm not entirely sure about that.
We can go to Tumise.
Yeah, so first of all, I think law school, and I'm pretty sure they do actually publish the percentages of classes who took time off and how much time off. And I'm fairly certain that people who go straight through to law school are in the minority, generally speaking, but definitely at Columbia. I took 2 years off. I found that most people in my class took 2 to 3 years off. You'll find people who come to law school as a second career, so they're like very grown adult people with wives and families, right? And there are definitely people who go straight through. But on average, I think most people take time off, and it's often looked favorably upon because you have that real world experience and perspective that you're bringing not only to law school, but it also has an impact in how you go through recruiting too. I took time off because I was super burnt out by the end of college. I knew I was burnt out going into my junior year. So it was just like, you know, I went into printing being like, yeah, I'm gonna go to like law school right afterward. And that just became very clear to me that I just didn't have the bandwidth. I worked as an analyst at Barclays here in the city. And so I got a lot of substantive experience in the markets. I was doing some regulatory work, which, you know, in my view, like had a touch point to the law. And, you know, I don't think it's necessarily required to work in a field or an area that seems legalistic, right? At least for the sake of the application. I think if it's for yourself to help you figure out like what the others on the panel have said, like that's good. But I don't think anything is worth doing for the sake of just getting a certain outcome, because that outcome is not guaranteed. I found that my time off most clearly came to bear when I was recruiting for law firms. Specifically because I had worked in finance and in New York City. A lot of law firms in New York service other banks or Barclays specifically. So every single interview I had, I kid you not, they asked me about my time at Barclays, and it was always like super in-depth conversation about that. It wasn't like, oh, you worked, you know, congratulations. But I think because I had that kind of experience that some people who were also doing corporate work could relate to, that's where it ended up paying off. The last thing I'll say is that I was like trying to do some soul searching, you know, like buying time, you know, like, oh, I need to like have my law school narrative when I come out of these 2 years of working, and I didn't, and that was okay. And I was just more comfortable with like owning that I was open to whatever experience law school brought me.
All right, thank you for your really insightful responses. I think we're going to go to Chase now with a few more questions.
Yeah, so going off of that, I think it's probably really important that we ask, you know, what's after law school? Once you get to your degree, what do you guys think you'll pursue? Whether it's a type of law or like a industry that's kind of on the periphery of law. Let's go with Michael, if you want, you could start.
Sure. So the path that I'm looking to take is very orthodox in some ways, very unorthodox in others. So I guess the very traditional Columbia Law School component of it is I'm looking to go to, you know, a large law firm. We call them big law in the industry. I'm not making that up. So a big law firm, and I'm looking to do corporate transactional work, maybe like mergers and acquisitions, capital markets, something like that. So that's all, you know, a lot of people do that, especially coming out of Columbia. I guess the differences between me and a lot of people is I'm looking to actually go to practice in Texas after graduating, ideally in Dallas. So not looking to stay in New York. There are a few of us, not too many, but there are some. And actually looking to eventually exit the law at some point, go over more onto the business side of things, maybe like 10 to 20 years down the line after graduating.
We can go to Moliang.
Yeah, similar. I have similar interests. So I'm also looking into doing corporate transactional work at a big law, but not in Texas. We'll stay in New York, and so I'm not entirely sure if I want to switch location after several years. Maybe I will go back to Asia, or go to London if I'm just tired of New York City. I don't know. And also I hope to switch to like a more business oriented role several years down the line. but maybe not after 10 to 20 years in a big law. I'm thinking maybe 3 to 5 years after working at a law firm, I want to work at a different company. But I'm still thinking about whether I want to work as a general counsel, so a more legal role in a corporation, or a more business side role. So it was really helpful. I remember during my 1L year, there was an info session hosted by the Career Services at Columbia Law. They invited a bunch of alumni who just did not do any traditional legal job right after law school. So a couple of people went straight into consulting after law school, didn't work in big law at all. And I'm not even sure if they got their, they even took the bar exam. They went straight to BCG or McKinsey, if I remember correctly. And there were 2 other people who went to big law, and after 4 years, they jumped to like an investment bank, a PE or something else, or a tech company. And they were not doing a general counsel role either. They were just doing like regular business, like manager, senior vice president at a certain firm. So I thought that was really interesting, and I might want to explore those options several years out.
Tumise?
I will be at Cravath, Sweden more in the fall of 2021, if the world exists. Anyway, this is like just a quintessential classic large New York City law firm. You know, different reasons for going to a law firm. First being just like general interest, and I enjoy kind of the corporate environment, corporate lifestyle. Obviously, it's a strenuous lifestyle, but the pay is excellent, right? And you'll learn more about this as you come to law school and explore careers. For many, there's the consideration of student loans, and going into big law is like very much justified if it's like you just want to make money and pay off your loans. But it's also justifiable for other reasons, including just be a really great space to get your lawyer training, just like your basic skills, whether it's as a transactional corporate attorney that we've been referencing, where you're like doing deals, or whether you're a litigator who's actually prepping for cases, trials, and doing what we like traditionally consider to be law and lawyer work. You know, in the long term, I could like very much like still be at a law firm, or I could also be like, you know, doing editorial work for a magazine, or like a lifestyle brand. I have some interest in international development. Curious to see how that'll play out. Could also go in-house and explore that. Basically, the world is your oyster. If you go to a school like Columbia or any of our peer institutions where you're coming out with like diploma privilege and access to some of like the finest law firms, or the finest like government roles, or the finest like public interest, and like kind of nonprofit work, you just have a lot of leverage with the degree, with what the degree's taught you. And honestly, like, you know, having gone through the training itself opens a lot of doors.
Amazing, amazing. Damonta?
Yeah, I would say I smile really hard when Tumise talks about how much she enjoys the corporate lifestyle, because that translates to nice things. Tumise loves nice things.
I do, yes, I really do like nice things. Thank you, Damonta.
I didn't think that I would be the only person interested in litigation on the panel. And so for those who may not know, litigation is basically the writings and documents you submit to court and then prepping for trial. And so I think I'm interested in that because that was my first exposure to law, and it just has stuck with me, and probably because I have a flair for the dramatics, and so the prospect of going to court, delivering statements, crossing witnesses appeals to me. And so in that way, my path would be pretty traditional. I am this semester interning at the NAAC Legal Defense Fund, mostly because I've never worked at a nonprofit and I want to see what that experience is like. And and also because they're doing important work in a pretty urgent time right now. And so I'll see what that's like. We're in week 2. I still don't know what I'm doing. I mean, they gave me an assignment, but I don't know what I'm doing. So depending on how I like this at the end of the semester, one of 2 things will happen. I anticipate that I will clerk immediately after law school, if that's a possibility. And clerking is when you work directly with the judge, helping to prepare their opinions and otherwise running their chambers. That's something I'm very interested in. If I don't get to do that immediately after law school, then I will go to a firm for 2 to 3 years. I am still debating things with my partner. I don't know yet where I will be, but it's probably going to be in New York or in Washington, D.C. We'll see how that turns out, or in Baltimore. And then after that, I will see what the landscape looks like to go into government and or public service. So.
Awesome, great. I think at this point, just for sake of being almost out of time, I say that anyone who's attending this event, if you guys have questions for our panelists, feel free to put them in the chat, and we can have the panelists answer them if they are able. So.
And we can also call on you if you have questions. If you want to type it and that, or raise your hand, we can probably do that as well.
Yes, okay. Question that just came in. Can you speak more to the law school narrative and how you can build that through undergrad and postgrad? I'm not presenting, maybe this is a hot take. First of all, great question. I encourage you to ask any law student or practicing lawyer who is youngish this question, because people have very different experiences, and I think it's important to know that there's a very wide range of experiences. I grew up in Southern Georgia, like very racist society. You know, I was very passionate about helping underserved and minority and Black and brown youth with education work, and I did a lot of that at Princeton. And I was like, oh, I need to like write a civil rights narrative, and I was like really torn between writing what I thought would be like desirable for the law school application process. And I was like, I have the experiences. I'm sure many of you can weave like your resume experiences in a certain way to be like very legalistic and like amazing. And I was like, but you know, like I cared about that. I did a lot of work about it. Do I want to make it central to my experience at law school? Not necessarily. So I just had some internal conflict, which is what I was talking about with the narrative. I think it's really important to recognize that there's no one like stereotype or like formula or things you need to do to go to law school. And I would just caution against telling yourself a narrative and then like doing the things to make it self-fulfilling. If you truly have a passion for like immigration law and, you know, have started to volunteer with organizations doing work on the border, and like, you know, you're very like engaged in that, you do that after college, and then you're applying to law school and you talk about it, like excellent, as long as you're remaining true to self. So I think my advice is remain true to self, stay curious. You could always make things sound a certain way, or like just write really deftly about whatever it is that you're experiencing in life, but it doesn't necessarily have to be targeted to like a law school or legal audience. My personal statement and diversity statement did not talk about any aspirations I had in the law at all. They were just reflective of personal experiences I had at the time I was applying, and that I felt really conveyed a lot about me. So stay true to yourself. It's really hard, I think. You'll hear a lot of advice about like certain ways to do law school applications, but I think it's better to be authentic and know that a wide variety of experiences will be recognized in the application process.
I can grab the second question from Tiffany if you guys want. So she asked if you're interested in corporate law and currently in undergrad, what would you suggest to do to explore the field? And I'll just give you what I think is a pretty direct, albeit somewhat unsatisfying answer. There really isn't much you can do, honestly. I mean, I'd probably say the best avenue is probably to try to reach out maybe to like some Columbia Law alums that practice corporate law, see if they'll talk to you and give you some insights. Other than that, there's like really not that much you can do. It's not an easy thing to just like find out immediately what the job is all about. I mean, I'm the co-president of the Columbia Business and Law Association, and yet I really don't even know what like M&A and capital markets really involve, like the nitty gritty of it. I can describe them broadly, but not really go into the specifics. From my impression and me speaking to alumni, it seems like corporate law fields, they are sort of a thing where you're not going to really learn them in classes, even in law school. You really need to do them like on the job, get that practical experience, like either, you know, doing a summer associateship or working at a law firm. It's tough to figure out. However, I will leave you with some positivity on this. You don't need to know really anything when you start law school about corporate law. You don't need to show up day one and be like, I'm going to be doing, you know, restructuring and bankruptcy work, and like that's what I'm going to be doing, and like tell that to the interviewer, write that in your application. It's nothing like that. There definitely is not an expectation that you're going to know what area of law you want to practice in when you're applying. There isn't even an expectation you're going to know by the end of your first year. So don't get stressed about it. Don't think that you have to like immediately figure out what you want to practice in and like learn all of like the terminology of these like, you know, legal practices in New York and beyond for corporate law. There isn't that pressure. You don't need to figure out for a while. If you do want to sort of get some insight though, or maybe reach out to some Columbia alumni through like the alumni directory and see if they'll chat with you.
I think I saw 2 questions come through for me specifically, so I'll take those. And then I will say I also budgeted this to go until 9:30, so I have a bit more time if people have other questions. The first question was from Jennifer. She asked if I could expand on my time at Teachers College and studying policy and what role that played in my role to law school. So I did that program immediately after undergrad, and I did it because I knew that I wasn't prepared to go to law school, and so I was trying to figure out like what else I could do. And all of my internships in college had been either teaching or in politics. My first internship was on Capitol Hill, and so I was like, okay, I'll go to teaching because I had a bunch of experiences growing up that just left me with a lot of questions about why the schools I went to for the first 15 years of my life were underdeveloped, under-resourced, racially isolated. And then when I went to boarding school, it was a completely different experience. And so I wanted to think more about that. I will say that I think prepared me, that policy degree specifically, prepared me well for law school in the sense that it was a lot of reading. Like that grad program was a lot of reading. And so I got in the mindset of having to read a lot for class. Law school is a different type of writing, so I don't think the type of writing necessarily prepared me, but I think the length of the writing did. I had to write a thesis, of course, for my master's program, which was at least 60 pages. And so now that I'm on a journal in law school and have to write a note, I know how to do that kind of extensive writing and research. And I will say too, the other thing that I did not expect, but which was true, was that a lot of the classes or a lot of the professors, when you're writing the exam, will give you what is called a fact pattern. You have to, or an issue spotter, I'm sorry, an issue spotter, and you have to identify the things that would lead to certain certain charges in criminal law, for example. But there's also a policy question about what ought the law be, and getting you to think more critically. And that's a lot of what I did in my policy program, was thinking about this is how the law is written, this is how it is implemented, how ought it change. And so that aspect of the normative aspect, which is very little, but still present nonetheless, was helpful. The second question was to expand on clerking and litigation and what that process looks like, and that came from Easton. I am just starting right now the clerkship process. You don't actually get to start until you finish your 2L year in law school. Most judges, they're trying this thing called Oscar, where you apply to all of the clerkships at the same time. And most judges are, I think, now getting in on that process. So you can't apply until after you finish your 2L year. What I know so far about it is that, what do I know about it? Brunetti, if you want to jump in here, that would be helpful. It's still a mystery to me in some sense, but I do know. I don't know anything
About clerking. I can tell you what limited amount I know as someone who's not really that interested in clerking, but
Oh, okay.
yeah, so clerking is working like for a judge. You do most of their like actual work, which is a very good experience.
I explained that part. They want to know about the process.
Okay, so the process, it varies. It's going to be different by the time you get there. And so there's this thing called the plan. I don't know, you've probably heard of this, Damonta, like the plan. So all of these circuits, they're part of this plan theoretically, where they're not going to recruit anyone until like their second summer for these clerkships. And you have to understand, the clerkship can be the first, like right after you graduate, it'll start. Some people will like get a clerkship offer for like 2 years after they start. So it's all over. It's not very, very fixed. It's not like the law firm pipeline where you go straight out every time. And so for the circuits that follow the plan, they're only going to be recruiting that second summer. For ones that don't, they'll recruit as early as May of the first year. I have friends who like got clerkship offers after graduation with circuit judges, like literally right after finals. So it's all over the place. It's a very, the Wild West. It's not nearly as consolidated as like law firm recruiting, where you have like this big on-campus interviewing program. And their interviews are a lot different too. I mean, they're very technical. Judges can interview you for like hours at a time. Like I had one friend who had like 3 hours with like the judge and his clerks in his chamber. And they ask questions like, your favorite Supreme Court case, what do you think about this doctrine, yada, yada. It's not like the law firm interviews where they're like, oh yeah, what do you like to do in your free time? What kind of practice area are you thinking of going into? Like stuff like that. So it's a much different process. It's a big animal. I mean, it's a huge commitment of time. But it's very, very important, I would say, if you're looking to be a litigator, to clerk, especially nowadays. Like if you're looking to make partner at a big law firm, or you're looking to really have like a nice job in government, being like a prosecutor, a U.S. attorney or something, clerking is very, very valuable. It's a great experience. It offers great connections. Judges will mentor you typically pretty well. So highly recommend doing it if you're looking to do litigation. If you're looking to do corporate though, I don't think it's really worth it.
And I think that's a good segue into the second part of your question, which is about litigation. Litigation is basically the research and writing process. And so it describes everything from briefs you're going to submit to memorandums of law that you submit to the court. Litigation is just I don't know why we just don't call it research and writing, because that's what it is. A note on the importance of clerking. I think mostly it's because it just opens doors for you down the long run. Like if you look at judges who are sitting on the courts today, they're overwhelmingly judges who clerked for other judges in the past. And so if you think you want to be a judge, clerking is a way to open up that door. All of the Supreme Court justices clerked probably for the Supreme Court, if not some very famous appellate court judge. And so it's just a way of keeping that door open. It's also good for academia. If you want to go into academia, helps to set you apart. There's a question from Zita about non-US citizens studying law in the States.
Yeah, I can answer that. I'm not a US citizen. Study law in your hometown and take the New York bar exam. I'm not sure I understand what studying law in your hometown means, but I feel like a JD degree is really valuable no matter where you're from. So if you want to, if you are interested in law like remotely, and or you are just like me, wanted to like go to like a non-legal job in the long run, you can get a JD degree, work a couple of years in New York City or California or wherever you want to work, and then you can jump to a different firm or go to a different office within your firm to an international office. So for a big international law firm, they have offices in Europe, in Asia, and in the United States in different locations. And I've talked with associates at different law firms, and they told me that if the firm is a big international law firm, some firms have really great policy about like transferring locations. So if you're starting in New York City, but you decided to move back to California, if you're from California, then you can just do an internal transition to like their Los Angeles office. But it really depends on the law firm. But you have the option to choose which law firm you want to work for. So, so it's not a big problem. Yeah.
Sorry, Moliang, to cut you off.
Sure. What do you want to add?
Oh, I was gonna say, I don't know if I interpreted the question. I thought the question was if you could study law in like your hometown, your international hometown, let's say yours is
Oh,
Beijing,
okay.
and then take the New York bar. Zita, is that what you were?
Yeah, hello. I was just wondering because I'm from Hong Kong and I wonder if I should do a JD in the States in order to have more career options that maybe I can work for a business sector or some law firms in the States in the future after I graduate, or should I do a JD in Hong Kong and then come back and take the conversion exam? Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. So I actually know a person who did a JD in Hong Kong University, and it works differently. So if you get a JD in Hong Kong, you will go work at a law firm in Hong Kong. So for example, Baker McKinsey, which is a Magic Circle UK law firm that has offices across the world, but you had to start as they call you like a trainee. So you are not a lawyer there. You are a trainee there. I guess the pay will be different, and then you will be an associate later. But if you get a JD in the US, you can apply for jobs in Hong Kong, and you just have to indicate your location interest. You can either choose to work in New York after law school and then go back to Hong Kong, or start in Hong Kong is really up to you. So I think JD in the United States offers a better option compared to studying law in Hong Kong.
If you don't get an American law degree, I think you have to get an LLM in order to practice in the States. So that's also a consideration, or at least all of the international lawyers that I know did that.
Thank you, Bo.
So I'd like to add a little bit of advice for people who are considering taking time in between. This is advice which I hope no one thinks is very wrong, but this is what I've gathered at least. So a lot of people, they're like, all right, maybe I want to be a lawyer, maybe I don't. What's a good way that I can figure out if I like law before applying to law school? Oh, I know. I'll become a paralegal at a big law firm after graduating, from Columbia, undergrad, wherever. I'll do that for a year or two, make a little bit of money, make some connections, and then being a paralegal, I'll figure out if, being a lawyer at a law firm is for me. So you would think that makes sense. It sounds good. From everyone I've spoken to who's ever been a paralegal, they say that's not a good idea, because apparently being a paralegal, and I'm sorry if anyone is a paralegal or looking to be one, I've just heard this. I'm just relating what I heard. I heard it's an awful, awful job. I hear it's awful because you're not being paid what like a lawyer's being paid. So it's not like you're making a ton of money. You're not actually interacting with like the law in any capacity. You're kind of just doing grunt work, like assembling binders, highlighting things, stuff like that. It's not going to help you with law school admissions that much. Like, the person at Harvard Law isn't going to be like, oh, this person was a paralegal at this firm. Like, shoot, this person's ready to be a lawyer. Like, no, it's not going to help you with any of that. Like, unless you're really set on being a paralegal because you want to be a paralegal for some reason and like, all about it, I would not feel pressured to be a paralegal at all. I mean, Damonta, Moliang, if you know any people who are paralegals, you can chip in, tell me what you think on that. I've heard it's not a good experience personally.
Yeah, I think that's that's right. And I think firms really get over on students by playing into the notion that being a paralegal is going to help you get into law school, because it really doesn't. The most important things for law school are your grades and your LSAT. And if you don't have that, like it matters 0% that you're a paralegal. I think they underpay you and they overwork you with very little benefit.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. And I actually spoke with lawyers who specifically advised me not to be a paralegal. So that tells you like that is not really that valuable for law school application. I would say if you are like me, who just wanted to take 1 year off between law school and college, do whatever you want. Like maybe work at a consulting firm, like economic consulting or whatever, a think tank, or start your food delivery business here in New York City. And that would be a really interesting thing to put on the resume. And I think the law school admission really appreciate seeing something creative rather than seeing just like a paralegal job at a law firm.
There were a few more questions that I want to make sure we get to before. And sorry, John or Chase, y'all can take this back if you if you want
No,
to.
this is fine. This is totally fine. Yeah, I mean, as we have some people leaving, but you know, if you guys will have time to get to the questions, that would be great.
So one of the questions was, what are the most important skills to have in order to be successful in law school? Does anyone want to take that one?
You know, I'll relate some advice that my pre-law advisor at Duke told me. He's a very nice, you know, older Southern gentleman kind of guy. And he said that one of the most important skills you can have in law school is having a really wide butt. And I was like, Dean Wilson, like, what does that even mean? And he's like, because if you want to do well in law school, you're going to be putting that butt in a chair for many, many hours, day in and day out, studying, doing the work, doing the reading. The work ethic is extremely important. And I would totally, you know, I thought it was really funny at first. I still think it's funny, but he was totally right. Like, if you're thinking you're going to go to law school and just, like, you know, coast by, you know, not do too much, just whatever, like easy stuff. That's not the case. It really isn't. If you want to do like relatively well, at least. If you're like I am, totally fine being like bottom 20% of the class. Like you could probably do that. Law school, as we're talking about the curve, you know, it's a very steep bell curve. So if you want to be on like the good end of it, that's a lot of work. If you want to be in the middle, that's still a lot of work. If you want to be like all the way at the bottom, I think it's kind of tough to fail law school, like very tough. It's not like, you know, organic chemistry where it's like, oh, you got the C minus, like great work, like you're doing awesome. No, it's not like that. So yeah, work ethic, putting the hours in. You don't need to pull all-nighters. You shouldn't be pulling all-nighters, but you should be staggering it. You know, it's not a type of education where you can really go out every night partying it up, and then it's like, all right, oh, class starts in 10 minutes. Let me roll out of bed and get there. Like I didn't do the reading, but I can BS it with the professor. Maybe you can. Most people can't.
For a minute, I was like, Michael, this is very inappropriate. Michael, this is very inappropriate. Michael, we don't talk about butts. The next question was from Arena, is what level of international flexibility do you think you have with a top-tier law school degree?
I can speak to that. Yeah, it's really, I think it's the best kind of law degree you can get in the world compared to law degrees you can get from other countries. Yeah, but I would say if you want to start in an international location right after law school, you have to be really specific about that when you're applying for jobs, because they don't want you to be like, oh, I maybe want to stay in New York, but maybe I want to work in Tokyo. If you really know you want to work in Japan, for example, you have to be clear about that when you're applying for jobs. And also for international flexibility, for example, in offices in Asia, it's not that you have to get a law degree in those countries. So for example, if I go back to China, I don't necessarily have to take the bar exam of China, because I can just practice law in a US law firm, their international office, and I can do corporate transactional work, which doesn't require me having a Chinese law degree. But then what's more important might be the language skill. So for example, if you go to Paris for work, you might want to speak French fluently. And I've heard lawyers from Asia Pacific that if you want to work in Hong Kong, Beijing, Shanghai, or any other Asian offices, you have to speak Mandarin. That's kind of the must right now, because the deals are just, the clients are, they speak Mandarin. So language might be a consideration rather than the law degree.
I echo that, and I would just give a story about one of our professors, our civil procedure professor, who is professionally into like human rights, splits her time in Paris and in New York, and she has a very international career. Obviously, at that point, you get more flexibility. She is on all these commissions and committees on behalf of the United States, and so it kind of comes with the territory. But there are some schools that are better for international practice than others, I would say. I would say Columbia is one of them. Columbia has a huge international law and international rights or Human Rights Project. Yale is another, but why would you go to Yale when you could go to Columbia? And so if that's something you're interested in, I mean, if that's something you're interested in, you should look into that. What is the purpose of working on a law review, and how does experience on a law review impact your law school experience and career development? Michael's on the law review, the Columbia Law Review. I'm on the Columbia Human Rights Law Review, and so and Moliang's on the Business and Law Review. So I guess Michael, if you want to take it first.
Yeah, so I'll do what I can with this. So how does it impact your law school experience? In a lot of ways, good and bad. The good being, you know, you get to work with some of Columbia's finest, you get to engage with all these academic pieces, you really hone your writing skills with the note, your editing skills, you get great attention to detail. Some of the finest, not all of the finest, Damonta. And not all of them are the finest, I presume. But anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so you get to develop those skills. Great. The negative, big negative. It is a huge time commitment. And I didn't think it was going to be. And I was foolish. I was doubting. I'm like, oh, people say it's like all these hours every week. That's just because they're slow. Like, no way can it be that much. And it is. It is. So be aware, it is a big time commitment if you're trying to go for a law review, presumably at any law school. It's a lot. No, not when it comes to time commitments, Moliang. The bigger is not, the better. It's tough to balance, but I guess it's doable. I mean, people survive it. As for the career implications, so it's different with corporate and for litigation. I think for litigation, especially if you're trying to become like a clerk or a judge, ultimately a prosecutor, all of that stuff, big advantage, big advantage. I mean, people will look at that if you're on like the law review. It could be for Columbia, it could be for Harvard, it could be for any of these schools. They look at the law review and they're like, oh wow, that's impressive, without even really knowing anything about it or what you did there. Like people, it's just like one of those things where like they assume you have this skill set, which after doing all the work, hopefully you will acquire. People love it. For corporate though, I don't think people care as much. I mean, that's the thing. I'm not doing it as like really a career booster. I'm doing it because like I've spoke to a bunch of law review people and they're like, oh, it's a great experience. You build community. You really like get better at like thinking and writing and editing. I'm like, all right, I'll check it out. And my mom was really pushing me to do it. She was a Hofstra law review back in her day. But aside from that, I don't think it offers like a huge career boost if you're doing like transactional work like M&A or capital markets, just because that's not really the work you're doing. You don't really need the prestige to get any of those jobs because they're just like very in demand, like trying to fill like M&A associates and stuff like that. So career wise, once again, just to sum it up, really great if you're doing litigation, totally try for it. If you're doing transactional work, not as valuable, but still can give you some useful skills. And it's a big time commitment if I haven't said that enough.
For the other journals, it seems like pretty much everyone at the law school is on a certain journal and the law review, but the law review is the law review. Although like Columbia Business and Law Review is called law review, but it's not a law review, it's a journal. And the other journals have like less time commitment, is pretty manageable, I would say. And the reason that everyone is pretty much on a journal is that the career services is telling us that you need to have a journal on your resume. If you're not having it on your resume, then when you're interviewing for jobs, then people will ask why you don't have a journal. So it's kind of like the minimum that people will have on their resume. But some journals are just requiring like 1 hour of work per week. So it's super manageable. So it really depends on what you want. So if you're like Michael, you probably will be on the law review. But like me, you probably will be on a journal.
Yeah, and I think they covered most of it. I just want to emphasize the varied nature of the journals and law review. So law review is huge. I mean, I wrote onto it. I didn't get onto it. It's the most competitive one at the law school because it confers the most benefit. And so some people on law review have said that they've like walked into interviews, mentioned they are on law review, or like submitted a resume mentioning they're on law review, and they just automatically get an interview or like get the job because and it has no relevance to the job. You're doing the same thing on law review that you're doing on these other journals, I don't know why it confers so much more of a benefit. But you're also putting in like 25 hours a week. Whereas the journal I'm on, the Human Rights Law Review, we put in like 10 hours a week. I think it's the second most demanding. And you can see the gap between like 25 hours a week and 10 hours a week. And so definitely consider that. It's a huge career benefit and boost, particularly if you're interested in litigation. But then if you don't want to do that, there are more specific like profession-oriented journals like Business and Law. There's one on Arts and Law, Human Rights Law, and a bunch of others as well.
And just to add in real quick, I think part of the reason why the employers view law review very positively is because, you know, they look at someone who is in law review and they're like, what's this person going to be like working for us? And they're like, well, let's see. They spent 2 years spending like, 20 hours a week doing all of this work for free. Like, that sounds like the employee I want working at my law firm. So it shows what you're willing to do.
And I think that should be all of our questions, right? Well, thank you so much, all of you, for such a great panel. This was great. We had a lot of attendees. I think we hit 50 at one point, but this is great, good attendance. For everyone that's still here, thank you for coming. Thank you to our panelists. Can we have a round of applause for a great panel? Great. Do our board members have anything else to add?
Thank you guys so much. This was really great. Just hearing your different perspectives and stories and insights. I think super helpful for a lot of people. So thank you guys so much.
Yes, thank you. And I will say, for everyone here who is interested in politics, interested in CPU, I will plug our organization as well. Come check it out. Visit our website, cupolitics.com. Subscribe to our mailing list. And well, I think that should be all. Thank you. Thank you all for coming, and thanks to our panelists again.
Thanks for moderating.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
All right. We'll see you guys later. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks again.